Hi, welcome. On this video, I want to respond by way of Robert Cabral, a very popular trainer on social media. Again, I talked about this a while back where he made that highly contradictory statement that science has no place in dog training. Okay, even though those who identify as balanced dog trainers actually have built on this inherently flawed idea as to what training is, by way of, again, talk about the force-free movement, purely positive trainers who approach training as a learning-based exercise, who engage that way. It's all about giving the dog the choice. Okay, talk about this whole thing about free will. I talked about this on a recent video by way of Dylan Jones. I encourage you to watch that video by way of all the confusion in terms of why it is that so many dog owners end up experiencing a counterfeit picture change within the framework of response. And again, this is where your dogs are responding in the training environment. They can look absolutely fantastic as they're doing a sit down, come and stay for treats, or they're motivated through something else, and even the relationship itself. I talk about this. The kind of by default, once the relationship's already going sideways, once a certain expectation's already been set in motion, you do A, you get B, then this can set people up to be deceived into thinking or assuming that things are getting better by way of certain responses when the relationship isn't actually getting better at all. Okay, understand this happens all the time. This is the number one issue. This is the thing I talk about in all my videos. But here, okay, and I talk about this whole thing with those who identify as balanced dog trainers, because we'll talk about this whole thing with Robert Cabell's recent post. He's trying to distance himself. He's trying to carve out a little niche or do something. Okay, I talk about this with these trainers that call themselves certain things on social media to try to come off as though they're different, that they can somehow escape all these issues, that you can trust what you see, you can trust appearances that way. But again, let's talk about this because here's the post here put out by Robert Cabral, recent post. He said, let's be serious, ditch the labels, crawl out from under the rock, and do what's right for the dogs. Well, what is right for the dogs? I mean, I get into this. I mean, these trainers who are marketing this very problematic idea as to what training is, that's setting this counterfeit picture in motion. Is that right for the dogs? I mean, that's the first question I would put out. Like, what are these trainers even talking about? Okay. I mean, see, understand this is the problem in the dog training world. The trainers, this is their default setting since the beginning. They're not questioning. I talk about all the controversies. Look at these trainers, in terms of, and look at the recent, controversy over this association, the infighting, the back and forth, but all over the confusion as to, punishment, right? So here he says, I'm so tired of these insane labels that people hide behind. Train the dog in front of you, the label means nothing. Well, it isn't about labels, okay? It's about what defines a process. Okay, I understand that it comes down to engagement. Okay, once a relationship problem is already underway between dog and owner, how are you engaging that issue? Are you approaching it by way of following the path of a intervention? Are the core ingredients I talk about reconciled at the social level? Our perceptions of dogs actually change in the right way beyond appearances? Okay, how these trainers actually establishing that within the framework of response. See, these are the questions, these are the core questions that need to be asked, but these trainers aren't asking. So even here, when you see Cabral talking about labels, this once again just another superficial post. This is this whole thing with like almost like don't question what these trainers are selling. Like don't question it. Like just train the dog in front of you. But what is training? See, that's the question of the century I talk about. So because if you just take his word for it, then then what are you doing? Like if you end up with a counterfeit picture of change, like whose fault is it? Is it maybe it's the dog's fault? Is that what these trainers are doing? See, the blame shifting goes along with this. So he says the divisiveness spreads everywhere. He's talking about race, religion, nationality, sex, and dog training ideology. Well, I talk about this whole thing about even this phrase that's been around since the beginning of time with dog trainers, that there's more than one way to train a dog. But in light of the information I'm putting out, very specific as to what defines a process and the problem with appearances, well, this saying takes on kind of new meaning when you consider what I'm saying, that there's more than one way. Well, there just appears to be more than one way by way of appearances, by way of responses that typically don't represent that perception dogs are actually changing. And see, you take this further, you start to layer this up. This makes sense as to why it is that those who identify as balanced dog trainers, they give force-free trainers an ideological hall pass all the time. Okay, this is why you get force-free trainers speaking as authority figures at a balanced dog training conference coming up. Okay, you just think about what I'm saying. So, because understand that balanced dog trainers, they're joined at the hip. Okay, they're in agreement with approaching training as a learning-based exercise. They're agreeing with engaging a process the way I described sets up a counterfeit picture for so many dogs and owners. So this whole thing with divisiveness, right? You can't escape divisiveness if you've embraced the lie, because a lie brings on confusion, it brings on hostility, it brings on divisiveness, it brings on all the bad stuff that you're seeing in the dog training world, right? All the bad stuff, and so you can't get around. You can't escape it. So here's my take. He goes on: if you're helping dogs, um, if you're not sitting dogs, if you care to make the world better for dogs and the people who love them, it's all good. Well, what does that mean? That's just a lame, one of these statements people make, right? To try to make themselves out to look better, right? It's like, okay, let's just say, let's not address all the problems, or let's just ignore, okay, all of it. Just be yourself. Like there is no truth. Truth is subjective. All the problems happen in the dog training world. They're what exact? There's some big random accident. Okay, I mean it's incredible. See these trainers and these trainers understand they're not going to look at the real problem here. This post here speaks volumes. It's just like they just want to ride this wave of, success as they see it on the backs of, dogs being destroyed, all the confusion, and they don't care. That's the bottom line. If they cared, they would be confronting the real issue. He said, "Who's brave enough to set aside the label and put the dogs um, first? I know some of you will, but who?" So here he's saying about labels, and so you go down here further on the thing. He says, I'm not a balance trainer. I'm not a purely positive trainer. I'm a dog trainer. Who will join me? That's ridiculous. It's like in this whole kind of, you see this whole trying to establish like that you're like it doesn't matter. Let's just all hold hands. Let's just all get along here. We're just all trainers without identifying, okay, what's a process? Like that's the problem. That's what's setting up all the problems. So why are these traders not actually confronting the process? Well, because to do so requires a trade-off. Understand that he says that he's not a balanced trainer, not, but he's aligned with this idea that trains a learning-based exercise. So he's in a trap. Okay, understand as many other trainers. This isn't like me picking on Robert Cabral here. This is across the board. Okay, Cabral is like on social media, putting out social media messages like this, trying to just continue to ride that wave right to the end. Okay, I understand this is just like what's going on. So I understand this has nothing to do with about confronting the real issue. This has nothing to do with dogs the right way. This is a human problem. And so you see trainers out there like Larry Crum call himself a purely positive, balanced dog trainer. You say, well, what the heck is that? What that is, these trainers are already compromised, and so they're trying to find some way to keep this going. Because God forbid you should actually confront the real issue, because then they have a real problem on their hands. They're just hoping the public doesn't question anything, just like trust what you see. Well, I say don't trust what you see, put it to the test. And you go back, go watch the videos just put over this one trainer who, again, you watch those videos, you see how he's put into a corner. There's the test, and then line it all up. Has a reactive dog, can't work through it. Well, there it is. I mean, understand there is a process. There's a way to put the relationship to the test, and there's a way to make sure you're coming on the other side by way of a intentional outcome based on a real picture of change. Thanks for watching.